This episode is brought to you by Katana, a DeFi-first chain built for deep liquidity and high yield. You'll be hearing more from them later in the show. Nothing said on Lightspeed is a recommendation to buy or sell any investments or products. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and the views expressed by anyone on the show are solely their opinions, not financial advice or necessarily the views of Blockworks. Our hosts, guests, and the Blockworks team may hold positions in the company's funds or projects discussed. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Lightspeed. I'm your host, Jack Kubanek, joined today in the office in the Blockworks HQ by Emmett Hollyer, General Manager of Solana Mobile. Emmett, thanks for coming back on the show.
Of course. Good to be here in person.
Yeah, and more importantly, congrats on shipping the phones.
Thank you. Yeah, long time coming. It's been 18 months since we started taking pre-orders on what is called Seeker now. Back then it was called Chapter 2. So it's been a long journey for our team, a long journey for people who have been waiting for it. But today's a huge milestone. Just getting to send out those first couple of phones, get everything moving is, it's a pretty big day for us.
What does most of the work become now that the phone is shipped? I'm sure that's the big thing you're working towards. But, tomorrow, once phones are going out to customers, what do you foresee most of your job becoming?
A ton of ecosystem work, working with people in the ecosystem. At the end of the day, we're building a platform. We're giving developers the opportunity to connect with a really crypto forward, really hungry audience. And so we need to help developers understand that opportunity. They need to get what's possible. They need to see what our users look like, what tools they have to build really great apps. So I know myself and a lot of our team are going to spend lots of time with all of the kind of familiar ecosystem teams who have been around for a long time, but also new and upstart teams coming out of our hackathon or other types of hackathon programs. And then from a product perspective, you can't change hardware once you've shipped it out. It's pretty set. But from a software perspective, there's a lot we can do. We've got Seed Vault, we've got Seed Vault Wallet, we've got the dApp Store. There's opportunity to ship new apps. And so we're both going to listen to customers, hear what they love, hear what there's room to improve, but also start tackling some of the ideas we've got on the roadmap that will take us into the end of this year, in the start of next year.
Yeah. So, I don't want to delay the thing everyone's interested in here too much. Tell us about the phone. It's out now. You can kind of talk about everything. Just give me the overview of the Seeker.
For starters, it's just a beautiful device, if I do say so myself.
You have it right here.
I have mine here. I've been lucky enough to start handing out real production devices. I can actually hand this over to you now. You'll notice it feels super crisp. It's super high quality. The materials are really solid. The screen is really bright. It's very light. So, for us, this marks a huge milestone. We get to actually put this physical product into people's hands. But in addition to just being a lighter, brighter, longer battery life device, we've got a lot of software improvements that have taken place from Saga till here. So, one of the big differentiators of Saga was what we call Seed Vault. Seed Vault takes your crypto keys and locks them away securely so that apps can't see it, the operating system can't see it. It gives you the security that users come to expect from something like a hardware wallet, but we've done that, below the phone's operating system. With Seeker, we've taken that and we've made it just as secure, but a lot easier to use. So we've really streamlined the transaction signing flow, the connection flow, so that it all feels very native. It feels very connected to the phone. And in addition to that, we've built Seed Vault Wallet. And Seed Vault Wallet is the first wallet that's built specifically for Seed Vault. And again, it's really focused on creating a super easy, super native crypto experience. So those are kind of the two big enhancements from a usability and a security perspective. But of course, we have the dApp Store. We have a ton of teams who have submitted freshly to the dApp Store. Starting in September, we're launching what we call Seeker Season, which is really all of these teams who have a bunch of pent-up excitement, who have built new products, who have built new features. They're waiting so that all the phones can get out and then they can start shipping their new programs. So we've got teams who are going to be launching apps exclusively on Seeker. We've got teams who are going to be extending the capabilities of their app to Seeker exclusives, and a lot of teams who are going to be running incentives, boosts, things to really target our community and start to build some of those usage habits.
Interesting. Okay. You touched a bit on sort of the differences between the Seeker and the Saga. Mm-hmm. I'm curious to just hear you reflect a little bit maybe on the how it feels right now versus back then. I remember, actually, I was in this office in 2022. I was an intern at Blockworks when the existence of a Solana phone was first talked about. And I was like, wow, that's cool. It'll never happen. But it's neat that they're talking about this. And here we are with the second phone. So just talk me through, mid 2023, I believe is when the Saga shipped. Very different environment around Solana. What was it like working at Solana Mobile then versus now? How are you thinking differently about the phone, about sort of the bigger project here as well?
Yeah. So I would say what's changed is now we have feedback. When we were heading into Saga, we had no idea if we were onto something, if we were like totally far off, what the reception would be. And so the fact that we've now shipped a phone, landed it in the hands of 20,000 users, and learned from them, what did they like, what did they not like? It means this time around we have a lot more information to work with. Like it's scary, but it's like less scary because we know that we're onto something. We saw the response the first time around. And so it gives us more confidence and also lets us know maybe what some of our blind spots were so we can address those. So I think that's kind of the biggest thing. The second is, from a differences perspective, this is just a lot bigger. We had a total of 20,000 Sagas go out. And those went out over the course of like 6 or 7 months, a lot of which happened in December of 2023. With Seeker, we've already pre-sold 150,000 of them. And we now have 150,000 people in 50 plus countries around the world, like desperately awaiting their phone. So like the expectation has only gone up. Because to your point, the first time around, it was a lot of like, will they actually ship a phone? Are they serious about this? Can they actually get this thing across the line? Now they've done it once, they're doing it again. I want my phone. And so now we have just a bigger audience to address, which comes with its own sort of challenges and anxieties.
Mm-hmm. Was there like a limit on the number of phones a person could purchase? Like I would think there'd be like a Sybil component you have to deal with almost.
Yes, we did our best. Obviously, you can never be 100% sure, but we put in restrictions on the storefront so that on a per email basis, a per physical address basis, there were limits to how many phones people could buy. Because one of the things we've seen from our development community is like they want to run incentive and user acquisition programs. They want to be able to say, hey, come use our protocol. We'll give you a boost. We'll give you a sign-on bonus. We'll do whatever because we really want to win your business. But when the cost to create a new wallet is effectively zero, those programs are really hard to run because you find yourself just like facing bots all day, every day. Having a physical phone that comes with a verifiable proof that you have it in the form of an NFT that's non-transferable gives developers just a little bit more confidence that they can run those programs and have less risk. There's just a little bit more Sybil resistance so that they feel confident if they want to give out some value of monetary rewards. It's less likely going to be just bleeding out into the same 50 bot wallets or 100 bot wallets.
Yeah, it's like a question of scale, right? Like you could buy like 6 phones and use all of them. It's harder to buy like 6,000 phones. Yeah. You could spin up 6,000 Solana addresses fairly easily.
No time, yeah.
With a bot. I want to ask about the creative journey. You mentioned one of the big differences now is people got the Saga. You had this feedback. So was there specific feedback that you incorporated? Was there stuff that you initially thought was going to be included in the Seeker that you scrapped? Like, what was sort of the journey to get to this point?
Super fun. With Saga, we mostly were working with a device that had already been spec'd. So for those who had Saga, did you ever like use one or hold one? Okay. It's a big phone and it's pretty heavy. Like it's impressive, but it's not like portable. And when the way you think of a phone as being a mobile device, it never felt like that. And so that was like the first thing we wanted to address. We knew that from Saga, some customers were always going to think of this as a secondary device. Maybe they couldn't get out of the Apple ecosystem. They were too locked into iMessage, whatever that was. And so there was value here. They saw the opportunity to use apps and do it securely and make it easy, but they always wanted a little bit of separation between their personal phone and their crypto device. So we had to make it smaller and lighter and brighter. And sort of paradoxically, phones actually get more expensive as you make them smaller. Smaller screens are more expensive than big screens because fewer of them get made, right? Like big screens are a dime a dozen, especially, when you look at the broader Android ecosystem, it's like tons of big screens are available everywhere. Making them smaller is hard, and it's that much more constrained, right? There's like less room for storage and battery and SoC and camera stuff. And so we said, okay, we know we need to make it smaller and we know we need to make it lighter. That is inherently harder, but it's worth doing. So we got to start from zero here. And it was amazing. We got to sketch everything out from ground zero, figure out from a hardware perspective what we wanted to accomplish, what constraints we wanted to set for ourselves, like what box we wanted to paint ourselves into. And, that was a little over a year ago that we were having those early conversations. And so now, we've seen multiple revs of this. Like I'm now holding a production version of it, but at home I probably have 10 to 15 variants of this device along the way, where maybe the color's a little bit different, maybe the shape is a little bit different, but ultimately we landed on something that we felt really confident to be putting into people's hands and ultimately into their pockets. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that was when you handed me the phone a second ago, I was notably light.
Yeah.
Like it felt lighter than an iPhone.
Yeah.
In my hand.
Uh-huh.
I thought that was interesting.
That's an emphasis for us, right? For those who do want to think of it as a second device, it has to be easy to take with you. Mm-hmm. Now, with that said, we're quite confident we're going to see lots of people treating it as their primary device. In the United States, Apple lock-in is like a very, very real effect, iMessage and all those things. But we sold less than 20% of Seekers in the US. The rest are distributed globally. And so in those markets where nobody uses iMessage, they all use WhatsApp and all the various messaging platforms, and they're not stuck to Apple Pay or iCloud, it's no problem, right? A lot of them already use Android. And so this becoming a primary device is easy. It does all the stuff a phone does. It has the Google Play Store. You can download Twitter and Instagram and your banking apps. But in addition to that, you also get this super seamless, super secure crypto experience and access to stuff that you can't get in the Google Play Store. So yeah, we wanted to make sure that it was portable, that you could trade. Like we always tell the story, like you shouldn't be stuck at your desk when you want to trade or do something. If it feels like you're lugging a brick around with you, you're probably not going to do too much.
And before we get off this manufacturing point, I'm just curious how that all worked. If memory serves, there was sort of an existing phone that you either bought out or partnered with for the Saga. Mm-hmm. Was it a similar situation this time around, or how did the manufacturing start?
Yeah, we got to start from scratch, which was great. Cool. First time around, we are still a small team. We were even smaller last time. Mm-hmm. So it was a few of us working with a few partners and just kind of getting through it. This time around, we saw a huge outpouring of interest from the community. Everyone was like, could tell that there was something there, maybe couldn't get their hands on a Saga. And so we were fortunate to have a lot of demand to serve. And then we got to take a step back and say, okay, who would we work with? How are we going to do this? And so a lot of the process felt the same insofar as let's define exactly what countries we need to serve and make sure that we can like ship to those places. And we've got to get the costs down to a certain point. So all that was the same. We were just working from a cleaner slate, and we got to work with some new partners along the way.
Incubated by Polygon and GSR, Katana is something different, a purpose-built DeFi chain that's focused on giving the best experience possible. It does this by sustainably generating deep liquidity and sustainable, real yield. Katana is built from the ground up, with DeFi mechanics to keep your bags from just sitting idle. All you need to do is use your favorite protocol, and Katana mechanisms do the rest of the work for you. Katana is launching with a notable ecosystem of primitives, assets, and partners including Morpho, Sushi, Lombard, Chainlink, and Yearn. Katana is a DeFi-first chain, built for deep liquidity and real yield, by redirecting chain revenue back to active DeFi users. The 1 billion CAT campaign is live. Bridge and deposit directly into vaults in one simple click, and start earning immediately on your ETH, BTC, USD, and more. As always, investments in blockchain technology involve risk. Terms and conditions apply. Do your own research. Okay, interesting. So maybe we've talked about the outside of the phone. Yeah. Inside the phone, you unveiled this new architecture called TeePIN, kind of a riff on DePIN, I guess. Talk me through what that is.
Yeah. If you think about what we've done so far, we said, hey, there's a problem. Developers can't distribute their apps. Users can't get access to great stuff. They don't feel secure using their phones. And so those problems require a little bit of hardware, but also mostly software. And so that was what we built with Saga. Was we said, hey, we want to build some software, but you can't just walk into a hardware manufacturer's office and say, hey, please include our crypto software. It's going to be worth it. So we took matters into our own hands. We built Saga and learned from it. And now we've extended the software. We've improved it. We've made it more seamless. We've made it easier to use. That's what's featured now on Seeker. But where we go from here is growing through other hardware partners. While it's fun to talk to you about the journey of building a phone, the truth is like building hardware sucks. Like it's expensive. It takes forever. And frankly, it just caps our scale. If we think that a really easy to use mobile experience is going to be an entry point for a lot of people into the growth of crypto, we can't just say, oh, and by the way, you have to buy the Solana Mobile crypto phone to get there. So now that we've got data and we have more mature software, we're going to start working with other hardware partners and say, we'd love for our software to be available to your customers so they can transact easily. But to do that in a way that doesn't just turn us into another one of these like centralized powers who control the tech stack and the economy, we've got to open it all up. We've got to decentralize it in the same way any growing network would have to. And so the underlying architecture of opening up this mobile platform is what we call TeePIN. And the very basic components are that devices can sort of enroll, they can join the network in a way that is trustworthy and reliable, but still preserves their privacy. Once they've joined the network, they have access to apps and builders who have done the same thing. They've enrolled themselves in the network, they've joined it. And all of the distribution of both apps and devices gets controlled basically at a network level by a group of what we call guardians. And so it's frankly not that dissimilar from other blockchain networks. It's a bunch of wallets, in our case phones, trying to join and transact on it in a safe and secure way. There are builders who are trying to distribute on it in a safe and secure way. And then there needs to be some certainty for those people that they can trust one another without verifying or revealing too much about themselves.
Maybe to make this more concrete, like what is this replacing in Apple or Android land?
In Apple and Android land, if you want to submit an app, well, I'll start as from the builder front. If you want to submit an app, you submit it to Apple, and then you wait for them to email you when it moves from one stage to the next. And when it gets reviewed, they're going to pick who reviews it, and you're just going to have to hope you get the right reviewer on the right day. The moment you open up that type of system so that people can submit permissionlessly, we don't need to tell them whether they can or can't submit. And then the review process itself is software oriented, and there are multiple reviewing parties that come to consensus on whether or not an app meets the requirements of the platform. Then it's all out in the open. It's all traceable. You can figure out where your app submission is in the process. If it doesn't get through, why that is. So I think from the builder side, it's obvious. Like right now, it's all opaque. You just play by Apple or Google's rules and hope it works out. Opening that up changes the builder dynamic. From a hardware manufacturer front, Android is probably the best corollary, just like general Android. Yeah. Android is an open source system, but it only becomes usable with something like Google Play. Google Play gives app distribution and it gives payments. Google, in its conversation with hardware manufacturers, says you can have Android, it's free, it's open source. But if you want the valuable stuff, the Google Play stuff, you've got to work with us on that. And they become the controlling factor of, okay, well, if you're going to install it, you need to basically meet these rules, and you can't do this and you can do this, and we're going to monetize everything. We're going to get all the services revenue off of it. You don't get any of it. Thanks for playing. If you imagine a world where something like an app store, something like, transaction and payment software, if that were instead all open sourced, and if there were fee revenue in the future, that could be shared amongst the hardware manufacturer who distributed the device, the app builder who built the app, then you don't need a Google or an Apple kind of sitting in the middle of it. So I think that's maybe like kind of at the bare bones. App builders no longer need to just trust that the review process is going to go well. They can actually see into it. And from a hardware manufacturer front, they get to include this software, include this distribution, include the platform, and not needs to like play by some centralized powers rules.
So is the Google Play Store on the Seeker?
It is. Yeah. And, I sometimes speak a little bit like down on that model just because it is a bit extractive, but we know that people need Twitter and Instagram in their banking apps.
They need it.
We don't want it to be compromised, right? Like if you're going to use this as your daily phone, you shouldn't have to decide whether you want Web3 stuff or Web2 stuff. So that's why we've left it in. In the long run, we'd love to be able to provide a version of this platform where people could not have the Google services if they didn't want to. But frankly, at this point, like none of the Google alternative Android variants are ready, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So we've continued to build a version of it that sits alongside the Google Play stuff.
Okay. So how is this TeePIN network different than from the dApp store that existed in the Saga phone?
The dApp store is a part of TeePIN. Think of TeePIN as sort of the underlying network architecture that lets devices and app builders and phone builders all come together in a way where they can be trusted, but also their privacy is preserved. It doesn't replace any of the software we've built, but rather it becomes the way phones and builders sort of come together. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like the sort of ticketing protocol. It's the way everybody gets verified and gets to join and stick around, or gets booted and is not welcome anymore. Being an app builder who's verified through our TeePIN architecture means you can submit apps to the store. It means you can kind of participate in all this stuff. So it's not, this isn't a replacement. It's just that so far the App Store has been very familiar to the existing app stores. And over time, we want that to change. So it becomes a wholly new, totally different version of what an app store can be.
Gotcha. And just so a lot of these functions last time were done sort of under the auspices of Android as opposed to
yeah.
TeePIN. Okay. And the T part of TeePIN, trusted execution environment. It's top of mind because we just did a Jito episode.
Cool.
And they also are using TEEs.
Yeah.
Explain why that has implications for security, why people should care, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Hardware is obviously super complex. Trusted execution environments give devices the opportunity to run things independently from all of the app space that most things run in. So if you think about on a phone, when you use your Face ID or scan a fingerprint, it would be really uncomfortable and frankly really weird if that information about your face or about your fingerprint were sitting in storage alongside the memes that you downloaded from Reddit. Like those two things are so different. One is so much more sensitive. One is so much less sensitive. Mm-hmm. And so the way we've relied on the trusted execution environment historically is we say, hey, for these things that are really sensitive, really secure, we'd like them to live separately from the rest of the phone. And so historically we've used that for Seed Vault because your crypto seeds are super important and you need to keep them protected. But as we grow into a new type of architecture, we'll also use that to verify devices so that when a device boots up, that whole environment can run independently of the rest of the phone. So if there's a bad actor, if something malicious has been done, you can verify authenticity and credibility in this standalone, separately provisioned area so that you can basically detect if somebody has done something malicious. It's a way to secure the network by running these processes separately from where typically all the bad stuff would be taking place.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. And in that sense, do you think this makes the Seeker more secure than the iPhone?
It's a different type of security. With iPhone, your phone is as safe and trustworthy as you trust Apple. Now, for most people, Apple's been pretty trustworthy. Mm-hmm. It's a different model of trust. And so it comes with its pros and cons. I think for us, we would rather see a world where multiple parties can be coming together to verify the trustworthiness of a particular phone or a particular user or a particular builder, rather than we try to replace Apple in that model. And we say, that person's fine, that person's not, that builder's fine, that person's not. Building something that resembles more of a blockchain, which is programmatic interpretation of these things, rules that can be governed by a community. We'd rather things progress in that way, because if not, then all we're doing is just like recreating what Apple and Google have done, but we're at the center of it as opposed to those guys.
Yeah. And I want to ask about this network of guardians as well.
Yeah.
I think also Tolly tweeted about like a DAO that would govern the TeePIN network. Mm-hmm. I mean, let's just start with these guardians. Who will they be? What are their responsibilities? All that kind of stuff.
We don't have anybody signed up yet. We're about to enter that phase. We wanted to get this phone out first. But the responsibilities are really going to be twofold. The first is verified devices. So when a device boots up and it goes through this kind of secure boot up process that confirms the device is authentic, it's legitimate, it's running the right software, it can package all that up as a proof and send it up to the network of guardians for the guardians to say, okay, yeah, this is legit. It's just like a transaction on an L1. It's like, okay, this looks fine. We trust it. We're going to give it the stamp of approval and pass it back to the device. Now that device has a token of authenticity for the remainder of its session. So that's thing one, is guardians make sure that device software is legit. The second is on the app front. Basically the same model. A builder wants to submit a new app. They package it up, they submit the app as a release candidate, and then guardians will run programmatic checks to check for things like spam, fraud, malware, all that stuff. If everything looks good and it meets the policies of the store, they approve it, and then the app can be distributed. So those are the two main responsibilities of guardians, is verifying the security and safety of devices and verifying the security and safety of apps.
That second point is interesting to me because it, whether an app is fraudulent or something feels like it could get into this subjective realm. And it almost reminds me of like Wikipedia and how they have this sort of, it's a really interesting yarn if anyone hasn't looked into it, but there's this kind of group of Wikipedia editors who wield a lot of power over what's reliable source material and what isn't, and this kind of thing. I just wonder how you think about that on the Guardian network end of things, because like it seems like there's some different considerations than being like a blockchain validator if you're screening whether apps should go on the App Store.
Yeah. We're going to learn a lot of lessons, I think, along the way. Two things. Versus Wikipedia, we want to make sure that anybody could become a guardian, right? Like ultimately they're going to control stake. And so there's considerations about how stake gets delegated. But it should be an open process to join, in the same way becoming a validator is an open process technically. In terms of the subjectivity of app reviews, this is something we're going to have to spend a lot of time on. We've already in-house started to experiment with how large language models can potentially make more sense of app code than just looking at the metadata of an app, let's say. Like, how can you run more specific programmatic checks against not only what is packaged in an app, but like how it would work, how it would render for users. And so there's a lot of experimentation to be done there. And the truth of the matter is we're going to rely on the community of users as well to play a part in moderation, in the same way that Wikipedia or other social media sites rely on signals from its community of users about things like safety and security. We're going to be very much in a similar position. And with us launching SKR, the native asset of our economy, that gives us an incentive mechanism where if we make sure that guardians have stake and that users who choose to stake can have a voice in the ecosystem, we can align incentives in a way that will hopefully be more efficient than something like a Wikipedia.
Incubated by Polygon and GSR, Katana is something different, a purpose-built DeFi chain that's focused on giving the best experience possible. It does this by sustainably generating deep liquidity and sustainable, real yield. Katana is built from the ground up, with DeFi mechanics to keep your bags from just sitting idle. All you need to do is use your favorite protocol, and Katana mechanisms do the rest of the work for you. Katana is launching with a notable ecosystem of primitives, assets, and partners including Morpho, Sushi, Lombard, Chainlink, and Yearn. Katana is a DeFi-first chain, built for deep liquidity and real yield, by redirecting chain revenue back to active DeFi users. The 1 billion CAT campaign is live. Bridge and deposit directly into vaults in one simple click, and start earning immediately on your ETH, BTC, USD, and more. As always, investments in blockchain technology involve risk. Terms and conditions apply. Do your own research. You also, a second ago, mentioned the SKR token, which I'm very interested to chat about with you. When that news came out during Accelerate, I think in May, it was really fascinating because to my understanding, this is the second token, or at the point when it launches, it'll be the second token that Solana Labs has ever released, following famously Sol.
Yeah.
So like really kind of a big move from you guys. So I'm just curious to hear what was the thinking that led you to say we should release the SKR token? What is the token going to be used for? Let's start there.
Yeah. So it all started from we're now on a path to having enough users and enough developers that we can see this growing to other devices. And as it grows to other devices, we need to open this thing up because we do not want to be sitting in the middle of it. Mm-hmm. So we knew we need to decentralize it as we grow it. And as we started to play that out, play all of the scenarios basically of, well, how might growth go? How might decentralization go? Where might we fall down? The one thing that was super clear was we needed everybody who was going to play a role in it to have their incentives aligned. And if we were just dependent on, I don't know, using cash as an example, like where everybody was just paying in USDC or whatever, there were fewer programmatic options for us to tie the Guardian's activities to the user's activities to the developer's activities. And so we said, okay, we know we want to grow it. We know we want to scale it. And crypto gives us this unique opportunity to introduce an asset to try to build the right economic loops and models to keep everybody's incentives aligned for long-term growth, right? Short-term, you're always going to have tension, but longer term, we want everybody to be basically rowing the boat in the same direction. And so as we were heading into the final stages of planning for Seeker, and we started to have some conversations with some hardware manufacturers, we were like, we think there's an opportunity here, but we need to start laying the tracks for that open future. So we decided a token would alleviate a lot of the anxieties we had around growth and decentralization. It comes with a whole array of other anxieties, but we felt like it was a risk worth taking. And so, it's still early days. We're still trying to figure out exactly what the model is going to look like and exactly how the token ends up in the right places and what the exact economic loops that we build are. But, from our initial planning, it seems pretty clear that the best way to hit that longer term goal is to keep an incentive alignment mechanism in place.
So SKR is not live yet. Is there an expected launch date for when you want to put the token out?
There's no launch date yet. Nothing to announce. I think we need to be really, really confident that we've got the right systems in place before we launch anything. Mm-hmm. So we're going through that now. We're making sure that we've got a full understanding of the systems that we want to use. So we'll have more to come on that front. Obviously when the token launches, we're going to want to make sure that it goes to the right places, that it ends up in the hands of the users and the builders and potentially the hardware manufacturers who have made sure that we can get to this point. But no like firm plans on any of the dates there just yet.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'll be really fascinated to see how the tokenomics of this thing are handled, because that's one of, I think, the most difficult parts of launching a crypto token. There's like endless, crypto conference panels on this subject. It sounded like you think there will be some kind of staking component as far as aligning incentives, but how like far down the road of planning out tokenomics are you, and sort of what's been your thinking so far?
We're pretty far actually on that front. Staking is something we're going to be committed to. Staking specifically because we want the network to be secured, and staking is a good way to keep everybody's incentives aligned and get some of that network security and safety that you would expect. Otherwise, from a tokenomics perspective, like I said, we've done quite a bit. We'll have a white paper ready to publish pretty soon. I think the big thing for us is we're very, very fortunate. We have a phone company that generates revenue. We have Solana Labs as a parent company who, has resources at its disposal. So a token launch is not like a cash grab. Like we don't need the cash. We don't need the money, right? We've always treated this phone program as an investment in like the long-term success of the intersection of crypto and mobile. And we see paths to business models here, but we don't feel the pressure to like cash in. And so I think one inherent difference from our tokenomics planning from other teams is just that. This is not about trying to secure capital necessarily for our team. We have the resources we need. We can continue to build, and we're feeling super confident about it. This is purely about trying to meet our long-term vision of an open, decentralized, hopefully widely distributed mobile platform.
So no Seeker ICO, it sounds like.
TBD exactly what the mechanics of things look like. I don't have anything to share there specifically, but I think more importantly, just philosophically, like this is about our users and our developers and future hardware opportunities.
Mm-hmm. So you announced Seeker a couple months ago. Mm-hmm. It's hard to imagine Solana, the Solana Saga having had an associated token because of the changing regulatory climate, sort of from the first phone to this one. So I'm curious just to hear, what that experience has been like for you, having between your first and second phone, really radically shifted regulatory environment, and also the threat of tariffs, which I guess there's like a smartphone carve out to what I understand, but for a few days that was probably pretty scary to
There's a couple of weeks of waking up and updating the P&L spreadsheet every morning, and this is like 15% tariff, 35%, 45, 60, 90, 115. I was like, we like pre-sold phones, which is really great. Like when you pre-sell a product and you generate a bunch of revenue, more times than not, that's great because it gives you economies of scale. It lets you like pay for things like hardware in advance. You have to put down deposits, whatever. Usually really great. But then when your cost of bills is about to double overnight, it's a lot worse. But to your point, there is now a carve out. Fortunately, there's some very powerful people working at some big phone companies that are US based who are able to secure that for a whole category of products that we just so happen to fall into. But, otherwise from like a legislative and regulatory perspective, I think it's been a consideration. Solana Labs is a US-based company. A lot of our team is based here. And so as we proceed towards decentralizing ourselves, like building a more open version of ourselves and launching a token to enable that outcome, we have to think about that. We have to assess our own risk tolerance here. And certainly like the shifting landscape has shifted our comfort at times. But I think most importantly, it's actually changed the ecosystem dynamics in a way that's helped us a lot. Seeing more teams taking more swings, trying new things, like things are just a little sturdier now than they were when we launched this all. Like I guess teams were a little bit more fearful back then. It was like people were, not to say more careful because that implies that they're less careful now, but teams just feel more willing to innovate than ever. And our success is going to be based on what type of swings teams will take in the store. Like what type of apps are people actually going to build that you can only get on this type of device or on this type of platform? That's going to kind of make or break how things go for us in the long term. And so more teams feeling more comfort in their innovation helps us in the long term.
Yeah, well, it was one of the critiques that was made of the old regulatory regime, which I really think is fair, which is, why would I spend 2 years developing a phone that when I could be regulated out of existence or unable to offer some of the key components to this, crypto native phone, when I could just go, launch a meme coin, geo-gate it, but you can get around with a VPN and just do a cash grab that way, like that, make your hay while the sun shines, basically. And so in a world where maybe if you're Solana Mobile, you feel less worried that you could not be able to deliver on some of the key parts of the project. Yeah. Suddenly it's like worth the time investment to actually build this thing.
Yeah. And the ecosystem sees it the same way, where there's more product innovation happening than ever. And I think that's going to be the big differentiator. Like obviously regulatory regimes shift and things change over and all that is true. But I think true, steady, sturdy product innovation means that people start to rely on using these products for their livelihood. It's either extremely useful or they can't imagine living without it. And as soon as we reach that point from a product perspective, it becomes a lot harder to then abolish those things. To then say, no. I know part of your job is you drive and you want to capture road data and take pictures and map cellular connectivity, but you actually can't do that anymore. Then you're impacting people's livelihoods. And so I think more products used more often just not only lends an air of credibility and makes it more clear the impact that we're having, but it makes it that much harder to try and peel back. And we need those use cases. We need those use cases to succeed.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of use cases, there is, the dApp store is making a comeback on the Seeker. I'm just curious to hear about the app ecosystem built on top of Seeker. How has that played out? Are there categories that have been really popular in the apps that you have greenlit so far? Just, talk to me about that generally.
We've seen a pretty big surge. So it's funny. It's like we announced Seeker, and like every team was in our DMs, and they were like, we want to build an app. Can we build an app? Can we build an app? And we said, of course, we'd love you to. And then teams said, when does the phone ship? And we were like, year and a half, maybe. Crickets. Didn't hear from teams for a while. And then Accelerate in May, we came back around and we said, hey, phones are coming soon. They're going to start shipping in August. And we've got this long-term plan to grow your addressable market devs so that it's not just these devices, but also other devices. Same deal. Bunch of teams came in. They were like, we want to build. How can we build? And we said, here's what you can do. And they said, okay, great. And then it got a little quiet. A bunch of teams followed through. We did get a bunch of new apps. And then everyone else, I think, has been waiting and waiting, waiting. And then today and last week, as things have gotten actually close again, teams are actually showing up. We're like seeing apps being built. We're seeing the things that were maybe staged, maybe started as a weekend project. All of a sudden, those are coming through to completion. And not only that, we launched our first hackathon. So there's just a different energy. You know, my 3 years working on Solana Mobile, 3.5 years, this is the first time where it's like every day I'm seeing new stuff being delivered by ecosystem teams. So I'm feeling like crazy bullish. And the other thing too, you know, it's fun playing with this today and showing it to a few folks, but there's a lot of teams who built things who are waiting for everyone to get their phones before they hit ship because they want to they want it to be a big bang. They want it to be like, okay, 150,000 people, here you go. Here's the app. So there's this funny, like, I guess, starting gate of teams who are just like waiting for the bell to go off. So I think it's going to be big. And then in September, we're actually launching what we call Seeker Season, which is going to be a weekly program for the foreseeable future. We've already got a ton of teams signed up where each and every week there will be an app coming to the store that's either exclusive to our store. You literally can't get it anywhere else. It's a version of their app with features that you can only get through the Solana App Store, or it's an app that has a unique incentive or a boost or some type of rewards program. Again, that's exclusive to our store. So we think in addition to just rounding out the store and building its breadth and depth, having these weekly big name, high tier, exclusive programs running through our store is also going to draw a bunch of attention from the rest of the ecosystem.
Interesting. And let's drill down. You mentioned you got a lot of attention from app developers when you said that you could basically grow their TAM. So why is that the case? Like, if I'm Jupiter, for instance, it would make sense that I would want to release my app on the Solana Seeker because I know that like my audience is going to be the ones buying this phone. Mm-hmm. But if I'm Joe app developer and I could go launch on Apple or Google Play and get a lot of their distribution, why is it worth it to devote the resources to getting approved on the Seeker app store?
First and foremost, there's no guarantee that you're going to get in through the other stores. So, you know, we are crypto friendly, and also economically, we don't charge fees. And obviously the fee landscape has been hotly discussed and that will continue to evolve, but we don't do it right now. We're not doing it. So it's, you know, it's not even a consideration for these teams. The second is from an audience perspective, if you are building something that is crypto first, crypto native, and you're looking for that early adopter audience, people are going to try things and give you feedback and spend money and trade. It's like the perfect audience for that. We saw with Saga, even with a more limited addressable market, the usage behavior could not have been more clear that, you know, people are outspending what would be an otherwise identical Solana wallet. It's, you know, the usage habits are super crisp and super clear. In addition to that, it's fewer entries in the store. So you're competing against fewer names. And so there's a bigger opportunity to be found. But honestly, most importantly is this is early days still. It's the second phone, but it's still early days. And so we have plans to work with other phone manufacturers, bring distribution to their devices. And so while it's 20,000 Sagas and so far 150,000 Seekers, in the next few years, as we onboard more types of hardware and make the dApp store and Seed Vault Wallet available in more places, your distribution grows stepwise. You know, it's not just like every time Solana Mobile sells another phone, you get another potential user, but rather, a few 100,000 users came on last night, a few million users came on last night. That's our long-term plan, is to help people. When I say grow their TAM, it's literally go find additional devices where you can get maybe the same distribution that you could get through Google Play, but you're definitely not facing fees and you're definitely not facing any sort of anti-crypto regulation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the fees piece is an interesting one because Apple 30% fee is now infamous. It's being legislated. I actually don't know where the fee stands at this point, but with some of the legal battles they've had. But if there ever was a reason for Apple to have to cut its 30% fee, it would probably because someone comes in and competes on costs, basically, and says like, we're able to house Fortnite, and you don't have to give 30% of your skins revenue to us. And obviously the Solana Mobile is a ways away from like that level of distribution, but I do think that this is why having new phone startups that are viable and usable is important, because it actually forces Apple suddenly to have to think about its prices and not have this like insanely, in my view, high fee.
Oh, totally. And to be clear, like even as this shifts, even as these legal battles are won and lost, it's never going to go to zero. Like it won't. Like even Epic, who's I think fighting very valiantly against those guys, their own version of a store has a fee take. Xbox, PlayStation, they've always had take rates. Like it is to be expected, I think, at this point, that if you're getting distribution and access to payments and access to security, you're going to pay a little bit. But certainly 30% is like more than you would expect. But I think to your point, having genuine, if not competition in the sense of competing at the dollar volume level, competing philosophically and drawing attention, I think it's enough to hopefully move the needle. And look, as we continue to grow and we get onto additional devices and we work through additional hardware partners, there are pretty compelling opportunities to like continue to tighten the bolts and start to build out some of the services that Google Play relies on or Apple and its App Store rely on. So we just want to build what is like a comprehensive distribution platform for developers and something that users flock to and see the opportunity in. We have a lot of work to do, but certainly what we're seeing right now is that we're onto something.
So if I'm a Solana team and I put an app out on the dApp store, maybe I'll get 50, 70K downloads, whatever it is. And then that kind of grows, as you said, over time as more users come into the network. But at some point, do you believe that the Seeker basically needs a breakout app in order to be successful, where you look at platforms that were really made by the apps that were able to be built on top of them? Like, does Seeker need that same kind of thing in order to be viable and successful long term?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. We are doing everything we can to help spur that innovation from our ecosystem. We have ideas internally, and I could easily be redirecting our resources and saying, no, stop building developer tools, stop building platform tools. Like, let's take some shots on goal at first party apps. But frankly, we're going to get a 10x multiplier investing in the ecosystem than we will in ourselves. So we just finished, well, I guess today is the last day of our first hackathon, which is the first time we've gone to teams who don't yet have their product. They don't yet know what they're doing. And we've said, come build with us. Because one thing we see time and time again is the innovator's dilemma of teams who already have a product. It's maybe moderately or pretty successful amongst Solana circles. Maybe they're already in the Google Play Store with like a watered down version of their app. Maybe they're already in the Apple App Store with a watered down version of their app. Getting them to come to the plate and say, like, take a big swing, like go nuts, do something that you couldn't get through the other stores, build something that's so compelling that people will become addicted to it. It's a lot harder to get those teams to like take those big, risky, audacious swings. The hackathon community, the teams who are not even like they're pre-product, they're pre-team fit, they're willing to experiment. And so we need to see some of those breakthrough apps. While I am confident that a lot of the existing Solana ecosystem teams can do a great job to refine their UX and build a very mobile first use case, I do think some of these new entrant teams, people who historically have come into Solana through hackathons and gone on to build really wonderful products, if they can enter through Solana Mobile's hackathons and Solana Mobile's growth or grant programs, then I'm confident in the next couple months, we're going to start to see apps that don't exist anywhere else and become viral. People are like, oh, okay, I get it. Like mobile plus crypto, like this is what this could look like.
Mm-hmm. I also did want to ask about the in-house component of it, because if you think about the iPhone, iMessage, Apple Music, like there's been revenue generating, very valuable, very good apps that Apple created for its own phone. So do you see a world where Solana Mobile starts doing that and sort of building out apps for the Seeker?
Perhaps. Yeah, maybe we still have so much of like the underlying platform stuff to get right that it feels almost too early. We talk about it a lot. I think, especially as we enter a world where we start to open things up, the token launches, there's more ways to be, or like more meaningful ways to be a connected member of this ecosystem. I could see us starting to build more first party products, but also like there's already pretty good versions of texting apps and like the basics. I don't necessarily want us to waste time trying to like rebuild some stuff that already works pretty well. With that said, it's never off the table. We have super talented Android engineers. We have super talented front end, back end, people who can write on-chain programs. And so it's always possible, but I would so much rather it come from the ecosystem trying to build their own versions of successful products than us have to be the ones to bootstrap that.
Mm-hmm. We did a Lightspeed episode probably close to a year ago at this point. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. Where, the Seeker was not out yet, but we were kind of just talking about some of your thoughts about building this next iteration of the Solana mobile phone. And one thing you said that was interesting was that you don't think most people want to do highly financialized things on mobile. They want to do like more kind of mint an NFT or, claim an airdrop or like things that aren't like trading or stuff like that. Is that still sort of your view? And how does that affect the types of apps you see finding success?
Yeah, I don't recall exactly what I said, but I would say that that's not how I feel right now. I very much feel like trading is a big opportunity. Maybe what I might have said back then, which I do feel strongly about, is we're at a position where people are getting more comfortable with it. They haven't built those habits yet. In the same way that when people started to go online with their phones, they would like shop on Amazon on their phone, but then go to their computer to actually buy the thing. We see a lot of similar usage now where people maybe are clicking around, they're exploring, they're going on explorers and marketplaces and launch pads, and they're seeing what's there, but maybe not actually pulling the trigger of a meaningful value. I think we can get there. I think trading feels to me like a really obvious use case for a couple of reasons. One, constantly like keeping track of the markets and everything that's moving and things that are launching and things that are tumbling is a really nice mobile use case. Notifications are really seamless. It's like a perfect opportunity to be notified on the go. And also the idea that you just have to sit at your computer all day and keep track of Discord or Twitter is, I think it's like pretty far-fetched that can be a forever thing. So taking advantage of being connected everywhere feels like a no-brainer for trading. And to be able to just quickly take action, to with a few taps be able to buy or sell or stake or liquidate or whatever, that feels pretty obvious. So I'm actually very bullish trading generally. I just think teams need to find the right mobile UX because, with banking apps, for example, at first it was like everything you could do on the banking website, they put it in the app and it was like overwhelming. And then with time, those haven't become more feature rich. They've become less feature rich. They've narrowed and narrowed and narrowed. And now your mobile banking app, the homepage is probably like receive money, send money, pay bill, maybe check your credit score. It's like very few things because they've realized like people just need quick access to do a couple of things that matter. And I think trading will very much fall into the same category, which is like, what are the couple things you might do when you launch this app? We can leave the rest of the features to desktop and that's totally fine.
I'm curious what you think about Zora as like it feels like it is like a speculative sort of app, but I think some of its developers and public champions are trying to portray it as like a non-speculative thing. I don't know. I want to know what you think about Zora.
So some things I like, I think social components of trading on mobile make a lot of sense to me. I think the idea that, cause like I know personally that my experience trading crypto over the years has been very social. Like you like get something right and you want to tell all of your friends, and then you get something wrong and they're going to make fun of you. And like, it's like, but that's the speculative side of things. I think starting to dial back some of the speculative pieces, but still keep those social components is really smart, really clever. And so I think that's something that is interesting about Zora, but there's frankly a bunch of Solana teams thinking a lot about similar social constructs. I think going so far in the social direction as to treat every piece of content that is created as something that can be coined is, I don't know that I'm quite there yet. I love the idea of ownership. I think, phones are really cool for being able to create content. Like, I mean, seeing some of the stuff that gets like made for TikTok and YouTube Shorts and Instagram from a phone is like mind blowing. I can't do that, but like I know people can like grab a couple pictures, grab a couple of videos, and all of a sudden they're like, they've stitched something together that feels almost cinematic. And with the advent of generative AI, people can just like make all sorts of content all the time, whether it's text or image or whatever. So phones are really powerful creator tools, and you should be able to own the stuff you make. And everything up to there, I'm like super on board with. The particular implementation of Zora, it's like, TBD, I guess. But I think there's a lot that's interesting there.
Mm-hmm. One thing I just thought about that I guess I missed earlier is who governs the terms of service. Like you a big pitch for the Seeker is that you can get your app approved. But if I make like, I'll go hit people in the kneecaps if you pay me app, like presumably that won't get approved. So who governs the terms of service, and where does the buck stop as far as enforcing those rules?
Right now it's us, but we don't want it to be us forever. I think we're going to go through a lot of, I think you mentioned totally talking about a DAO earlier. There could be a world where some of both the assets of running a platform and the liabilities of it come together somewhere else, where there's a bunch of people participating together. These are frankly some of like the really complex challenges that we've got to sort out. Because right now we govern the terms of service and all the policies and the enforcement of those policies. But long term, we want to build something that's more open. And so we'll have to really put on our thinking caps to figure out exactly how that all comes together.
Mm-hmm. And that dovetails well with where I want to conclude, which is I'm going to ask you about arbitrary time horizons to prepare yourself. But what is maybe, let's say, the 2-year vision and the 10-year vision for Solana Mobile? So it takes you another 2 years to make the next Solana phone. Yeah. What do you want that to look like? And then in 10 years, like, where are you hoping that this ecosystem and platform and everything you're building will be at that point?
So over the next 2 years, we need to have at least one other phone that we didn't make carrying this platform. So that could be a brand name smartphone. That could be a brand you already know. It could be a brand you already own. But you should be able to get access to all of the great apps that have been built for this platform. And you should be able to transact super easily and super securely. So that's my next 2 years. Like, whether or not we make another phone, what it looks like when it launches, I'm frankly not even thinking too much about that yet, because I think Seeker's got a good little bit of time before we need to really start asking ourselves those hard questions. And I'm frankly spending way more time on working with other hardware partners than I am speccing our next phone. So that's over the next 2 years. And then I think if you just naturally carry that forward over 10 years, it's that on steroids. It would be, my expectation would be that you can bring versions of the Solana Mobile platform to any device or almost any device. And doesn't even have to be phones, right? It can be other types of smart devices. I think the idea that devices can join a network permissionlessly and get access to distribution and assets on the network and all of that feels compelling and is worth continuing to pursue. If we don't make another phone again, I won't lose a night of sleep. But if the distribution of this platform ends with Seeker, I will. And so that's really just going to be our focus for the next 2 years and the next 10 years. And honestly, over the next 10 years, if my team doesn't change size, I think that's a good thing. I think if we stay small and we stay punchy and the ecosystem steps up in the same way that Solana and its ecosystem stepped up where labs and foundation and all those organizations didn't need to go crazy from a hiring perspective. I think we'll very much be in the same boat. If to succeed, we need to double our team and double our team and double our team, something's wrong. The whole purpose of this is that we're taking less the front seat and instead serving up a platform and saying like, go nuts. Hardware manufacturers, go nuts. Builders, go nuts. Users, go nuts. So that's the next 2 to 10 years.
Okay, that's really interesting. How are you thinking about bringing new devices into this network? Is it, hey, I'm a struggling upstart glasses wearable startup, and Solana is gonna, provide some incentives and some help integrating, and maybe you find new distribution from joining this network? Or is it you're trying to find people who from the ground up are going to build new devices and then add them to the network that way?
Preferably more the former than the latter, actually.
Okay.
I think long term, this whole thing makes more sense if it's organically coming to devices that people are already familiar with and on. I think the idea that we can just continue to sell crypto enabled hardware products, like we will eventually have saturated the market, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not quite big enough that there's enough people on the planet who care enough to specifically buy a phone that we release. We can keep doing that. Like we've got an audience. We'll continue to exceed their expectations with the hardware that we build. But like that to me feels very finite, like what we can continue to do there. So instead going and saying, there will certainly be some in the second category, which are like, oh, we see an opportunity to solve a very specific market's crypto hardware needs. We'll be super happy to work with those teams. But the audience of builders, of hardware builders who are just focused on building devices that meet most of users' needs to then supercharge those with hopefully simpler and more secure crypto solutions over time. I think that probably opens the most doors and creates the most entry points to this growing pie.
Are there that many devices out there? Like I'm just thinking
there's more than you'd think.
Okay.
It's a very, it's like a very US centric phenomenon that there's like so few phones.
Yeah.
It's like crazy. It's, here it's like a couple iPhones, maybe a few Galaxies if you're like feeling crazy, and like maybe you'll see a Pixel once or twice. It's crazy narrow. I mean, if you even walk into like a telco store, like if you walk into a Verizon store or a T-Mobile store, there's usually like 30 plus devices on display, which seems crazy because then you like ride the train and like hang out with people in the office and it's like 1 or 2 phones. But when you leave the United States, it is crazy diverse. It's like hundreds of devices, like all sorts of weird innovation, tons of price points to go down to basically free with your carrier up to $2,000 for sort of ornate foldables. There's a really, really wide spectrum of devices out there. And for us, Seeker, less than 20% of the sales have been in the US. Yeah. So it's like, we're a global company. Like we're focused on, while we're based in the US, our growth opportunities and like the areas where this can be taken and really run with are as global as you can imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's such an interesting through line I didn't really expect, but I was just thinking through that as you were speaking, like, oh yeah, he also mentioned that the phone comparatively didn't really get sold as much in the US. So America's just cooked, I guess.
Yeah, we've tapped out. That's it. It's a wrap, folks.
Yeah. Well, that's all the questions I have for you. But Emmett, I really appreciate you swinging by the studio. Congratulations on the phone's release, and excited to have you on again soon to kind of track how this how this whole ecosystem plays out over time.
Thanks, man. And I'll remind you, in case I haven't already, if you pre-ordered your device, head to solanamobile.com/shipping. Make sure you tell us where we can send yours. I think we brought you one to the office, but just go there and confirm it. And if you didn't, store.solanamobile.com. We still have plenty of Seekers to sell, so we're excited to bring it to as many people as we can. But thanks again for having me. It was great being here in person.
Great. Thank you, everyone. If you made it this far, we would love if you gave this a thumbs up, a 5-star review, wherever you get your podcasts. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend, and we'll see you all again very soon.